All right, let's call the meeting to order with the Anne Arundel County Charter Revision Commission. Really good to see everybody here. I'm Tori Snow with the commission, and I suppose as we get started, do we have minutes from the previous meeting to review? I don't think I saw
So
any.
because of the fast turnaround this time, we thought it might make sense to let you guys approve all the minutes at the next meeting, and then you'll have a little more time to review everything.
Okay.
Sound good?
Sounds good. So then we'll turn it over to the Office of Law for legal review. That's the next item on the agenda. Is that just a sitting item?
I can discuss. This says legal review.
It might just be a standing item.
Yeah. There was a memo that was distributed kind of late in the day today on adding districts and/or at-large members. And we really, the bottom line on this memorandum is that is really a charter revision item to change a couple of sections of the charter to either increase the number of districts or add at-large members, and at that time the districts would also be defined, so it's really not, that in and of itself is not a redistricting issue. The county has always had 7 districts. We've never done anything to increase the number of districts, and we do not have at-large members, although as Ms. Kenny mentioned at the last meeting, there are multiple other counties that do. So we would be happy to discuss that further as we move forward more towards the charter revision portion of your review.
Just to clarify, you said that if we add the members, then the new districts would be defined at the time the members were added, or it would, did I hear that correctly?
Yes, I recommend, the way we think it, there are 2 sections of our charter, or at least 2, that would be implicated. Our charter actually has a section that defines the 7 districts, or describes the 7 districts. Obviously, it's not accurate because since then the council has modified it through legislation. So if the council were to, or the recommendation were to go to 9 districts, there would be a charter amendment to say there are going to be 9 districts, but there would also be a description of those 9 districts that would replace the description of the 7 districts that's in the charter.
So it would accompany a new map?
A map, yes, and then a kind of meets and bounds description. Sure. I mean, the description that's in there now is based on precincts, but I think that the more recent legislation is more kind of a meets and bounds description of the various districts.
Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Anything else for or from the Office of Law?
I think that's the only thing I have to update unless anybody has a specific question. I'd be happy to answer.
Nope. Okay. All right. Well, then, so the next item on the agenda is a map discussion. However, with the permission of the commission, I did want to bring up a point of concern and then a thought and then something that is currently being circulated, and that has to do with the time frame that we're operating under. In the previous meeting, I did express that I was very concerned about the extremely aggressive deadline to get maps out to the public for review. And I think that even in our discussions that has come up as a concern that we're under really tight constraints. And just in thinking through the scheduling, we actually are expected to have a map or even a couple of maps for the public to review, if I'm not mistaken, by next week. We don't even have any consensus about where we are, where we want to go. We had discussed some fine adjustments. I think there was discussion about maybe having a smaller group to kind of work on things, and even that timeline, I think, was extremely aggressive, where you'd have almost daily meetings of extended time. So the concern was noted in the previous meeting, and a member of the council did reach out and indicate that because of the concern that was expressed, that a resolution would be proposed to communicate an extended deadline, right, into at least April, which could potentially give us time to approach this with a less reckless speed, like this is the equivalent of going like 150 miles an hour on 97, right? And it's reckless. So I really would like to get a feel from the other commission members if we would be in support of such a resolution, to let the council know that we need more time, and then perhaps if there are any implications, from the Office of Law or anything. So I'll open it up to you guys for discussion if you feel that would be appropriate. Commissioner Telford.
Larry Telford, yes, I'm all in favor of extending our deadline. Looking at the chart that we got, I think almost on our first day, it talks about the history of redistricting going back to 1990. But if you look at the 2000 census, the final maps were approved by the council 3 years later. If you look at 2010, it was also approved 3 years later. So it's pretty common for these things not to pass even within a year. I believe our predecessors, from going through all the work the counties provided us, I think the previous commission met like twice a month for 7 months to to create their final series of maps. And if you'll recall from what they had to do, all they really had to do was change some of Council 4, move it into Council 1. And so my point is if all they really wanted to do was tweak it, that was a pretty simple task. Because I think we all know here, we have had two things happen in the last 10 years. One, the growth has been unequal. It's been piled up in West County. And also the demographics of the county has changed a lot from 2010 to 2020 versus the previous 10 years. As Mr. Kaufman has said, I think almost every meeting, because I write it down, let's make sure we get it right, not get it fast. I feel bad that our chairwoman's not here to hear all this, but this has kind of just happened the way it is. I'm all in favor of, to use your term, Mr. Kaufman, get it right, not get it fast.
Thank you. Commissioner Hangleiter?
I second exactly what you were saying. I agree that we need to proceed with caution and figuring how this perfect world is going to work out in order to get this through by our deadline. While we still have a lot of hurdles in front of us, both on our side as well as getting it through the county council and the state. And I think we're better off just proceeding by making sure we're all on the same page and we approve of something prior to presenting it to the public.
Commissioner Fleckenstein.
Tom Fleckenstein. Theoretically or philosophically, I'm not necessarily opposed to taking more time if we feel like we need it. I will say I think it's maybe a little bit premature. From my perspective, I feel like I think we have felt over the last several meetings as we talked about the maps and the information and the data that we haven't really gotten anywhere. I actually think that when we go back and we look at what we've accomplished on Monday and what I expect we're going to accomplish today, I think we're farther along than we think we are, to the extent that we've digested a ton of the data now that are going to go into these maps. You've taken a great lead in playing around with and drawing some proposed maps, for instance, that we've already discussed. We know we're going to have some maps to look at from the county. We've kind of been working with the idea that we had a compressed schedule, and I think we've done a pretty decent job of doing that. I think with what we talked about and learned on Monday, with what I expect we're going to learn tonight, and then if we do have three of us that are going to sit down with planning and zoning, even if it's a couple of times over the next week or so, I think it's very possible that we're going to have the ability to present to the public a couple of different potential options that might, probably would include something along the lines of what you've proposed, and then maybe a tweak type of map. I think we can potentially be able to do that, and I think, if we figure out by the end of the week that we can't, then I think an extension makes sense. But what I would hesitate to do is to say, hey, yes, let's automatically do it, and then start operating under the notion that, okay, we've got all this additional time. The next thing you know, it's April, and we've spent all the time on maps that maybe we don't need to, and we haven't dove into some of our other tasks that I think are also going to take a lot of time, some of which may take more. My point is that when I came into the meeting on Monday, I had really no idea what I thought maps would look like, and thought that we were in a position where we might never get this done, and certainly not within a week or two. And after what I think at times was a laborious discussion on Monday, I actually felt quite different. I left here Monday night thinking, okay, we've really got a good handle on this. We're going to be able to put together 2 or maybe 3 maps, get some public input on a variety of things, maybe a tweak, the new districts, but then also, hey, what's the public appetite for maybe something that looks drastically different? And if we've got a couple people working on some things with planning and zoning over the next week, we might be able to do that. So I guess my feeling on that is, let's see what we can accomplish in a week. If we feel like we need more time at that point, because I suspect we all pretty much have felt the same way, then we can tell the council we think that would be helpful. But if we don't, if we just do that, I'm afraid sometimes you work better when there's a deadline and there is some pressure, as opposed to putting things off to the 11th hour. And I think if we can get it done, we should, and then move on to our other business. And if we decide in a week we can't, then we can take the council up on it and say, you're right, we think we need more time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kaufman.
David Kaufman. I think one of the things that we have to consider is the difference between maps for public input and maps for public decision. We're in a position to be able to solicit and garner feedback from the public on two conceptual ideas. And what we've kind of focused on, I think one of the things we talked about at the last meeting was really focusing that conversation into two lanes. One is a map that, as we're describing it, tweaks the current population distribution so that it kind of equalizes a little bit more, but largely is a continuation of the current model. And another model that began with Commissioner Snow's map that rethinks the distribution in the county. I am also anxious to see how tonight goes with regards to the nature of our discussion, the nature of the work, the nature of what you were able to, we have a sense between Monday and today what 2 days worth of work is able to do in terms of manipulating maps and get that feedback. I will reiterate that I believe even if we decided today, even if we had a unanimous consensus of everyone on the commission today, and everyone in planning and zoning jumped up on the table and thought it was a great idea with whatever transforming map we would be coming up with, if that were the lane we went into, I still believe that it is our responsibility to ask that the council consider it after the February 26th deadline, because I do not believe that you will likely see the kind of transformative change in the districts when it has the potential of dramatically impacting the 22 election in ways that we aren't even anticipating in the course of our discussion, because we're not placing all of those details into it. But that's a real factor in the approval of our work. And I don't want to see us put together something that is, let's call it nonpartisan, a nonpartisan effort to try and put forth a representative document, a representative illustration of our county, and have it not get across the finish line because there's more issues at play to be able to get it there. So I don't disagree that tonight's meeting is going to inform the pace of this conversation. But I also, as I've said all along, I want to make sure that we're trying to get through a detail level, not just a conceptual level.
Commissioner Waddy.
I was, this is Stephen Waddy. I was wondering to hear more about what happened with that discussion, or if you've heard what you heard from Council Member Volke. He said that he wanted to delay it until April was there. Was it for our benefit or for their benefit? I wasn't sure.
I was made aware I was actually reached out, I don't know where Volke came up, but a couple of council members reached out and asked me about my remarks at the last meeting, where I, in a less veiled motion, expressed frustration that we were put in a situation. And it was admittedly personal because I haven't put my kids to bed in the last 3 days. I literally saw my kids this morning, and I'm like, I'm not going to see you tonight again because we're at these meetings. And it's the holiday seasons, and I was talking to my wife and talking about the public meeting, and that's the Christmas play rehearsal, and like this has been an incredible burden. I mean, as a professional, right, I signed up to do this, but even when I reached out to Councilman Volke, which I did talk with him because I was expressing my concerns, when I signed up, I signed up with the understanding that we would have time and we would be meeting a couple times a month. I didn't realize this was going to be a second full-time job. So I think it was out of concern, like, you sounded more upset than you typically are. And I'm like, yes, I am upset because this is the holidays and I'm doing something that I really enjoy doing, but it's coming at the expense of my family in a scope and scale that I didn't anticipate. So, and there were several people that reached out just to kind of get to get to the bottom of what I was expressing there. So I think it was responsive to that. And then I think the other part was when I told my wife about the public hearing, she's like, anyone that's a mom or a parent in schools and everything, like, that's literally school rehearsal time. If you're in a Christmas pageant, like December the 11th, that's our Christmas rehearsal. So I'm playing with my son and my daughter, and I have to tell them I can't come to rehearsal with you because I have, a public hearing to hear from the community input. I don't like being in those conflicts. So I do feel that kind of informed the human aspect of this, if that answers your question.
Okay, it does. I appreciate you going a little bit deeper into that, and I definitely understand. I'm with you in almost every aspect of that, and that's what I was wondering also about in terms of the council's schedule, whether or not that was a part of the consideration, because I know that they also have, a lot of obligations prior to February, and how this would affect their obligations. I'm thinking more about their schedule of, I know the budget hearings are coming up, and, it's going to be a very busy January and February for them on that side, and then to have this added is going to be a major discussion. I am not of the mind that there will be major, transformational changes, even if we suggest it. I don't have that perception from this council that there'd be a massive change in districts that they would accept. And so I want us to be able to have that discussion, but I don't think that it's going to be. I think they're thinking a lot more practical than maybe we may be wanting them to. And that's just the nature of incumbency, and so it's not something that I think is going to be taken into consideration, even if there's public testimony. Public testimony does not necessarily sway elected officials, especially if it's, coming from a personal standpoint all the time. They really could just not care oftentimes. So I just, I'm comfortable with the schedule. I would personally I would like to get these out of the way. I think that these maps from our suggestions are not very well. I don't think many people are thinking about the district maps outside of our discussion, and I think that there's not going to be, judging from the redistricting conversations going on in Howard County, Montgomery County, Baltimore County, and across the, even the statewide congressional maps and the state legislative maps. Redistricting is a very contentious issue, and the Anne Arundel County maps are not the talk of the town. They're not the galvanizing map of the moment in the public discussion. For us, they're extremely important. For the people of this county, they are extremely important. And I wish that we could get people in this room during this meeting. I wish we could get people to comment publicly online. I wish we could do those things. I don't see it changing by April. I really, judging from my experience with the county council, this room is generally filled with people who work for the government and a few people who have their individualized concerns about a particular issue. And other than that, they don't care. And they're happy not to hear from the county government. And so I don't have I'm not of the mind that our schedule needs to change. I think we're putting in great work. I think that the Office of Planning and Zoning and the Office of Law and, you know, everyone that's been involved here on this commission has done great work and on this compressed schedule. And I think that our compressed schedule will be able to get us through to the finish line.
Thank you. Commissioner Hangleiter?
I just wanted to ask, in the prior charter review commissions, were the maps, redistricting maps provided to the public prior to the meeting, or were they only presented at the meeting? Were they presented on the website or anything like?
If you give me just a moment, I can probably search through and figure that out. However, I think what we're kind of expecting is that there would be some maps that could be provided at least ahead of time before the public hearing, and otherwise it's going to be hard for people to look at something, process something, and be prepared to testify on it. I think, to be fair, you would want to give them some time to do their own homework, which would be difficult to do if you did not give some kind of lead time on the maps. So that was the plan. However, before this meeting is over, I can get an answer to your question.
Okay, I would agree that it's kind of hard to look at a map on a screen and not be able to provide feedback without being able to really look at it. It's a big county. But if you can just let us know about what day you would need that map, and so that we can really work down as we're looking at a 12-day time frame between now and that public hearing, and we still have 4 weekend days in between there. And then is there any issue if we were not able to meet that deadline? Is there any issue with postponing the public meeting? Yes, I'm sorry.
Lori Blair, Deputy County Attorney. No.
Okay.
I mean, there's no open meeting implication, and we're still far enough out. Postponing would not be an issue.
And how far up until that date? Or, are we allowed to have as many open public meetings as we choose? Or how far up until that date do we have to cancel that meeting?
I think it's just a reasonable notice kind of thing. I mean, I wouldn't cancel it that day because people may make arrangements to be there, but I would do it at least a couple days ahead of time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Commissioner Kaufman?
David Kaufman. A couple of the comments, Commissioner Waddy, that I wanted to reply to. Listen, I don't dispute the general apathy in the nuts and bolts engagement of the general public in government activity, whether it be at the city level, county level, state, or federal level. So the statement I'm going to make next is incredibly idealistic, okay? One of the contributing factors to apathy and engagement is a sense of lack of representation and a sense of lack of voice. And our commission, maybe I'm just waxing incredibly idealistically here, but one of the reasons that we get to do what we do, not as elected officials, but as appointed, to be able to go through and have conversations about how the drawing of our districts represents our population and how the population has shifted over the years, is that we get to advance forward ideas towards improving. We are the engaged general public because we weren't elected to these positions. We are the people who said, I'm at a meeting and I'd like to be able to be more engaged and be more part of it. So we represent how we want people to feel like their voice can be heard in government. And we've heard repeatedly the concerns of representation in West County, and we've heard repeatedly concerns throughout the county about representation in general. I just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to explore that. The second issue, and I've spent considerable time thinking about this because I tend to be a strategic thinker in how I approach work. The issue with regards to the incumbents, in our current model, unless there's an appetite to extend to a 3-term limit for our council members, any person who's an incumbent now will not be subjected to the changes to any proposed major changes during their time as a council member, because once this next election occurs, they won't be eligible to run for office again. So they get to be positioned in a way to make a courageous decision if they choose, without the consequence for their immediate term, which is a reality. And I'm not even saying it's necessarily selfish. I mean, we have the potential of putting 2, maybe 3 current incumbents that are running for re-election into the same district and asking them to vote for a district map that could have all 3 of them running against each other and 2 of them primarying each other. That's not realistic to expect that would get across the finish line when they're looking at their own re-election campaign. But it is if they sit back and say, my candidacies aside, is this what Anne Arundel County looks like? And that's why, if we are thinking that we really want to advance something that's transformational, it's why I believe that on the other side of February 26th, there's a real possibility for the council in the discourse of representation and it being a communicated priority of this council. I think it would be difficult to not entertain a candid discussion and conversation about how to best represent the citizens of Anne Arundel County. But I also don't want to spend an hour and a half now not getting a chance to look at maps that you've prepared for us. So I don't want to be further contributing to us not being able to look at maps and see what kind of pace we're able to get to.
Certainly, and I was actually just going to say, first of all, I was just wanted to kind of gauge the temperature, and I was going to recommend that we revisit this conversation after we review the maps tonight and see, as has been mentioned by Mr. Fleckenstein, that maybe our temperaments will change, but I think it was good that we all kind of put our initial thoughts on there, and perhaps we'll consider that. Is everyone in agreement with moving forward, or would you like to respond, Commissioner Waddy?
I would just real quickly respond and say that the transformational change has not, we've been in a pandemic for the past year and a half, and this council has had the opportunity to make transformational change across the board, and they've deflected, and it's not going to change. that's my, and we are the people that would, I mean, some of their transformational changes that they feel like they've done has been beneficial. Other things for certain communities, especially the black one, the minority representation one, it's remained the same. The one that's been affected the most by the issues that are the greatest at this moment have not received any transformational change, and I don't see it happening again, ever, in this council. So that's why I say, it's, in a pragmatic note, I think we can move forward at the same speed that we're at right now and be able to make sure that, you know, there are maps that reflect, you know, some of the changes that have gone on in particular districts. But I don't see them actually being, you know, it's them. Our discussion is academic for the most part. When it gets to them is where the decisions are going to be made. And, you know, judging from their decision making that I've been watching, you know, for the past year and a half, and, you know, the aspects of this county government, I don't see things moving in a transformational, you know, massively transformational moment in 3 months, 2 months, 6 weeks. So.
Okay. Well, with that in mind, let's revisit this conversation at the end of this meeting. Yes, Ms. Corby.
Vice Chair Snow, can I just give you a quick answer to Ms. Hangleider's?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's in the final report on the redistricting efforts in 2011. It says a couple of things. It says public hearings were held on June 27th and July 25th. The commission met 9 times, and again, this is all on the redistricting portion. And then it continues to say, the first public hearing on redistricting was held on June 27th, 2011. The commission asked for general comments on redistricting, which is interesting because they didn't talk about maps. Some individuals testified. The second public hearing was held on July 25th, 2011. Copies of the maps that were included in the interim report were available for viewing by the public, which says to me they probably had big paper copies on easels here, or maybe small paper copies. It does note the interim report was posted to the website. I can't speak to the capabilities of the website in 2011, so again, I'm not certain they would have posted the maps like we definitely will. So there is that. So there were 2 public hearings, June 27th, 2011, July 25th, 2011. The June public hearing was just general comments on redistricting. The July public hearing was for comments on the maps.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
They were also 6 months ahead of us if they were meeting with the public
Right.
in June, July.
And they also had a great advantage that they had a month in between those versus we have 3 days.
Yep. All right, let's move forward with the presentation of proposed or requested maps, and we'll turn it over to Planning and Zoning.
Good evening, Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. First, for this evening, I just want to kind of go over where we have been and where we want to take you this evening. I know that I missed the meeting on Monday, the 22nd, where you talked in some detail about the Esri redistricting software. I know that you understand what our base scenario is, how big our adjusted population is, the fact that our target population for the districts is 83,633, and we're looking for a deviation of no more than 10%, 5% in each direction, which adds up to 10. On Monday evening, the 29th, Mark presented the demographic report, which I would say was a little bit like eating an elephant for you. It was a tremendous amount of data. And and the other thing, last Monday, you were also presented some maps for alternatives, which were simple plans of how to balance population within the districts for alternatives. So last Monday, Mr. Snow brought in a proposal which we popped into Esri redistricting on the fly in the meeting. We don't know that we got every line correct, but we did our best to just pop it in. When we ran the numbers to see what that looked like as far as target population for each district, we had some really huge swings, like way out of the 10% deviation that we're looking for. So what Mark and I did over the last couple of days is we went back to try and balance Proposal 6, maintaining the integrity, we went back to try and balance Mr. Snow's proposal, and we're now going to call that Alternative 6. We're going to call Mr. Snow's proposal, which was a submission by the Redistricting Commission, we're going to call that number 5. And then we also were asked to look at, is there a scenario where we could keep District 7 rural? So tonight, I think 2 of the things we want to focus on are the Alternative 6, which is essentially the commission recommended map that we balanced within Esri redistricting, and then the District 7 keeping it rural alternative. And what we tried to do is to then also boil the data down for you so that you can see graphically in a nice table how all the population is distributed, starting with, non-Hispanic white, non-Hispanic black, Hispanic Latino, and on down the line. So with that, I've kept we've built on this slideshow, and I'm going to be honest with you, we really didn't get the slideshow done until about 6 o'clock tonight, so it hasn't been given to you, but we will give it to Laura, Ms. Corby, to give to you. And then, once we get through these two maps, what I would like to do is, not only do we have the flat maps that we can show you on the screen, but we have dropped them into Esri Portal. You will have access to Portal. And I think Mark is going to give you a little tutorial on how to deal with Portal. The really super thing about the Portal is you were able to look at all 7 of the alternatives. You're able to zoom in on lines, on neighborhoods, because we have aerial-based data, plus we have roads identified so you can find where you are. Oh, that's the Safeway I shop at. You'll be able to figure all of that out. Mark is going to give you a little tutorial on how to use that. There are other layers in there. You asked for the school feeder districts. Those are in. The communities that we originally talked about that originate in Plan 2040, they're in there. So then you all will be able to work, hopefully, with those. Obviously, if you haven't worked in that kind of Esri live map, if you have questions, we're available to answer them. But I think with that, Mark, let's go ahead and pop over to slide 22. So I will note that Mark decided to go with a different color scheme. It doesn't mean anything. He simply picked a different color scheme. So alternatives 1 through 4 are in one color scheme, and 5, 6, and 7 are in a different color scheme. This is essentially the submittal that we got on Monday that is not balanced. And I think if you look to the table to the right of this map, what you can see are the percentage of deviation. So for instance, District 2, which I think was referenced on Monday evening as the heart of the county, that's a super big deviation of 16.17%. And again, we're looking for a deviation in any direction of less than or equal to 5%. And then also District 7 was way under, 22% under where it really needed to be. So with that, we went ahead and went to adjustment plan number 6. And this was to, again, this was to try and balance the numbers while maintaining the integrity of the plan. The biggest deviation that you can see here.
I'm sorry, can you enlarge it real quick, please?
You know what? I got that. Okay, so we were working at a pretty fast pace today, and I do see here in this table, I have the total population, and I do not have the actual district numbers, but the district numbers would be in order 1 through 7. And so looking here, what you can see is the way this map has been drawn, we do not have any deviation greater than 5% in any one direction. District 5 ends up being smaller. It's in the negative 4.65%. And again, we are going to give you the Esri tool, the portal tool, that you can go in and look at the particulars of this, of what we did.
Chair. David Coffin.
Yes,
and I don't want to, this is important for understanding all of this. As a default, these are all still based on census blocks, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We did not deviate from census
I just wanted to
blocks.
make sure that I was understanding. You started with a map that wasn't based on that, and I just wanted to make sure that we were applying that. Thank you.
So really, for the tool we're using and the fact that it's incredibly difficult to subdivide census blocks with any certainty as to what the population would be, we are not doing any splitting of blocks. And there are some very weirdly drawn blocks. That's why there are some weird little lines and jogs. It is the nature of how this mapping goes. Mark, go ahead and go to the next slide, which is okay, you have the table. So for every one of the adjustment plans, you now have a table. Left column starts with the district, the total adjusted population based on what has been drawn, what is the total deviation, what's the percent of deviation, and then I added some colors just to kind of make the graph easier to read. Those colors don't mean anything. It's just to help us because the data was, it is a ton of columns on one page. But I started with the non-Hispanic Latino white population in pink, the non-Hispanic Latino black population in blue, the Hispanic or Latino in the light orange, non-Hispanic Latino American Indian Alaskan Native in a different color of blue, non-Hispanic Latino Asian in yellow, non-Hispanic Latino Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander in lavender, non-Hispanic Latino other race in light green, and non-Hispanic Latino 2 or more races in pink or red, light red. And then the final column is basically the totals without the non-Hispanic Latino white included. And that you have one of these for every single map. So that may also help you determine if you like alternative 1 versus 2, 3, and 4 as far as simplified plans.
Does anybody have any questions or input on this?
Ms. Pompey, if I may, since we have a Google document, is it at all possible for you to upload this? Like, I'll be honest, in that chart, I cannot see anything in that chart, so I don't feel like, is that possible?
Laura, can we send it to you?
Yeah, we can get it into the drive.
I'm sorry, I think all three of us are echoing the same thing that we can't quite see.
I was at Lens Crafters.
I got new glasses a couple months ago. While we're waiting for Ms. Corby to do that uploading, some things to note about the balancing of this adjustment plan number 6. Number 1, we tried to keep, I think in the original proposal that came to us, Odenton was split. We tried to keep the majority of Odenton in District 4. There is a portion along 175 that's in the Odenton Town Center Master Plan area that is included in District 2. Other notable options here are that we didn't have any choice but to add in some of Crofton to District 7. We also took the rural areas around Crownsville and added them to District 7, which was represented on the map. And then we had a very tough time with District 6, mainly because Cape St. Clair is all the way over to the east, and it is big population, it's very dense. And so it was very hard because it would have been easy to try and cut that in half, but we wanted to keep Cape St. Clair together. So that was another challenge that we had in where to strike the line between District 5 and District 6 on the Broadneck Peninsula.
Ms. Pomp? I'm sorry. Can you, is the Oatmeal High School feeder system, I think is, in what he described what Commissioner Snow described as the heart. And I was wondering, looking at that map, how many district lines would cross?
The school feeder districts?
Right, the Oatmeal, yes, Oatmeal. I think Northeast High School and Chesapeake are on that northern part. And
So bring in 6, please. And then, bring in the high school districts.
And we want to see Oatmeal. Which, Mr. Waddy, which districts did you want to see?
I mean,
You said a couple high school feeder districts.
Oatmeal.
yes. Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were asking the numbers, because I can't see the numbers. Mr. Kaiser.
If I could, one of the things to keep in mind with the Board of Education's school districts for feeder systems, every time a new high school is constructed, there is a major redistricting of the feeder systems. And so when we think about what a map would look like today versus what it looked like 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years in the future, they're going to evolve. I know the Board of Education is in the final stages of an RFP to hire an outside consultant to assist them in providing input, guidance, recommendations on how the term redistricting can be facilitated in the Board of Education system for where kids come from with the feeder system. So that's going to always be a moving target.
Thank you.
Christina Pompa with OPZ. So what Mark has done here is in the turquoise color, that is the Old Mill High School feeder area. And you can see that it traverses, it cuts up into District 1, District 2, District 5. I think it clips a portion of 3, 4, and 7. It's a pretty large feeder district.
Which, and just as a note, in the map's current configuration, it's the same case. The council districts, yeah. So,
That would be correct.
got it. Commissioner Kaufman?
Two things. First off, a reminder, there will be 2 old mills. One's currently being constructed now, so this is all going to shift significantly over the next several years. Can I ask, well, I guess I'm going to, so District 5 is at 79,742, is immediately adjacent to District 7 at 87,311. Don't get me wrong. If you look at the adjustment plan slide, that there's no question that the fire-breathing animal that is District 7, you see the fire that is District 6 spitting out. It's very cool. You'll never be able to unsee that again. But it's even got an eye up there where the red dot is. Anyway, it seems odd that we would have such a disparity between 5 and 7 being immediately adjacent next to each other when we could shave off maybe some of the head of the dragon. And I'm sure that there's I'm sure it's not nearly as simple as I just described it to be, but
Yeah, actually, so I'm not the mapper. I'm more of a high-level staff person, and I make sure everything is getting done in my division.
no judgment in the question.
But I've been sitting with Mark as he has been working on these, and it's really it is zeroed in on streets and what's that neighborhood, don't run it through that block because you're going to chop that neighborhood off. That is the level we're looking at. But it is also challenging to do that kind of work, so we can certainly look at that line a little more closely. And just because we're within the deviation doesn't mean that it is perfect.
And this, at the beginning of the meeting, I talked about the difference between a map for discussion purposes and a map for approval.
Correct.
This is a map for discussion purposes that gives us the opportunity to have the kind of discussions that we're having, to be able to say, but again, that really is a pretty cool image. Nice job.
Thank you.
I was gonna echo that sentiment, is that really the entire point of this exercise is to encourage us to think about what is possible and whether this is something that would be an appetite, for this. And so honestly, I think this is a really, really good, the way that you were able to keep the heart and spirit of it. I like the way that's presented. Thanks for the statistics and data. Does anyone have any other thoughts or input on this before we move on? Okay, I think we're good.
So we have one more, which is the try and keep District 7 rural option. This, we also managed to do a balanced plan. It was very challenging, I think, especially between the divisions between District 3 and District 5, and again, how we were going to shape District 6 across the Broadneck Peninsula. As you can see, if you try and keep Crofton out of District 7, it really has to come up into Crownsville and spread out. It also requires that District 1 is more elongated, still coming all the way down into Maryland City. Because again, you have a heavy population concentration in the northwest portion of the county. And so trying to balance District 1 and District 4 in this scenario is fairly challenging.
I feel like you have to change District 6 to orange, please. I cannot unsee it. Thank you, Commissioner Kaufman.
Gotta turn District 6 to orange.
So, anyone have any? I have a couple questions here. So, do you have a similar demographic data on this map? Can we see that?
Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. With the slide deck that Laura just sent you, Ms. Corby, you will have all of that data. Also for the first four alternatives that you saw last Monday, the 22nd.
Commissioner Kaufman.
David Kaufman, if you don't mind going back to the map of this. And again, keep in mind, this is just feedback on the first glance at what this feels like to me is actually shifting and replicating the problems we have with our current map by virtue of starting in an extreme and working everything in towards the middle, and then the middle becomes this, like, the District 5 in our current makeup is, lengthy and peninsular. If it's possible to be on the overall, sorry.
Mr. Kaufman, do you want to go back to the simplified map?
Please, yes. Okay. So if you compare what this does compared to what our current map does, it's kind of the same, only shifting the focus of starting at 7, going up in towards the center of the county, and then having all of these other spindles. If you go to the first adjustment plan, yep, you were, that was it. No, I'm sorry, the
6.
5 adjusts, that one, yep. When you look at this, you still have an ability to maintain somewhat of a central, 5 doesn't have to keep coming over as far west as I think it was, and maybe you know what, I'm not, oh, I know what it is. It's that District 1 is so much different.
Yes.
That's where
what's
my
happening,
discomfort sets in. I gotcha. But I, not looking at a street level, I'm not.
Mr. Burke, could you please go back to adjustment 7? I just want to make one comment about 7. So if we expect that the growth is going to keep happening in the northwest portion of the county, right? So as we have more growth there, and we have the majority of South County slated for lower density, less development, this problem is going to keep happening every decade, right? We're going to have more and more population, and how do we shape 7? The thing is, to try and keep 7 rural, as you can see, it's hemmed in on the upper west side already by development. Like, this is the max you can do with 7 trying to keep it rural. It would never get better than this.
Yep. And Commissioner Snow, if I may, I think the other thing that is just immediately jarring to me is suggesting that the peninsula portion that is currently in District 3, the southern portion of District 3, to suggest that is more the same as across the entire heart. I guess that's Route 3 coming across as far over as that comes, and then wrapping in Severna Park. It just doesn't seem as homogeneous a community as the other maps are for me.
Commissioner Hangleiter? Oh, sorry.
No, just keep.
Yep.
I'd like to thank the Office of Planning and Zoning for considering us down in South County, and the fact that there has been a huge press. I know that every part of the county is very different. South County kind of identifies as its own district because we are very different than most of the county. And there has been a huge push in the last redistricting, still speaking of it, everything that's going on, about how our district is the rural district, and how the sentiment is that our district would like to keep it that way. I recognize the challenges, but I just want to say thank you very much for considering it, and I hope that we can, as the maps evolve, we can continue to consider this.
Commissioner Fleckenstein?
So I don't live in 7, but I've got a million friends who do, and I've heard nothing but the same thing for 20 years I've lived here. And obviously, I understand what you're saying relative to the population, so that maybe it's a little more of an issue than I thought. But the other thing too, with this kind of a plan, we would be changing, certainly, I think, significantly the character of 7. But I'm also looking even at 5 and 3. You've got in this District 5, it's going to cut all the way over. It looks to be, I don't know if it's Edwin Rainer or Magathy Bridge Road or Hogneck or whatever it is, which is where I live. And all of a sudden you're cutting off Lake Shore, Gibson Island, Jacobsville, a whole host of what has historically been District 3, and what historically the folks that live out where I do recognize their neighborhood and their community, that Pasadena, Lake Shore, the Chesapeake School District, the Northeast School District. And if you're looking at a significantly different community, if you're coming on that far eastern part of that proposed District 5, When you get out into that Lake Shore area, out into Gibson Island, you're looking at very, very different demographics than you are when you're in the Severna Park portion of that district. I can just envision. I don't think at any point in the 50 years of charter government that the Pasadena Peninsulas and the Chesapeake area and the Northeast area have been broken up like that. I think you'd have significant pushback from a large segment of my neighbors and my community about breaking us up like that. And so it's not just about trying to keep South County rural, which I think is a significant consideration, but other neighborhoods that are historically together. I don't think there's going to be much support for breaking up Pasadena in that manner there and lumping it in with Severna Park and parts of Broadneck. Not to mention the fact that geographically, actually to get from, let's say the most eastern part of District 5 where it borders down at Cape St. Clair, to maybe get out to Lake Shore or to get out to Chesapeake High School, I can tell you that's a hike, believe it or not, for a council person or a staffer or even just a citizen. I mean, I could envision that some nights being a 35, 40-minute drive to get out to that. That would be, I think, in a number of neighborhoods, a problematic district.
I have a couple of questions for Commissioner Hangleiter with regards to keeping District 7 rural. First of all, can you create a definition of what keeping rural means? That's the first question I would have, just so that we kind of have a common area of operation here. And then secondly, based on the data and the things that I was kind of playing with, is it feasible that we as a commission, as we look to keep it rural in its character, perhaps look to push closer towards the boundaries of the lower deviation point for population-wise, if that makes sense? So from planning and zoning, right, we're trying to get close to the ideal population, but would there be a tolerance for a smaller population relative to the other districts in the pursuit of your mission?
Ashley Hangler, yes, absolutely. I do agree that possibly teetering on that 10% deviation would present a possible solution. We are primarily in South County. There's a lot of agriculture. There's a decent amount of agritourism. It has a little bit more focus. You can see the amount of coastline we have in South County. A lot of our concerns are similar to other parts with much coastline on our environmental issues. So we have quite a bit of out throughout the western side of District 7 is primarily farmland, everything. There are subdivisions, but not many. So I think the push is to maintain that. That's what everyone, even in our own small town, they won't even let a Safeway in. Okay, we have very, very small things. We're very focused on no big development like we have. We want to drive to go to those things. So I think being in that same district with like-minded people, now personally, I don't think that Crownsville is similar in that. Crownsville is big, open area, not all of it, but there are, plenty of areas that are above the 214 or above Edgewater that qualify as rural.
Thank you. Commissioner Kaufman?
Yeah, so I want to remind the commission that actually a deviation below and this isn't a statement of judgment, just so that we're knowing what we're agreeing to. A deviation that extends below the average is actually affording the citizens greater representation with their voice on the council. So if District 7 were to be, say, this 79,000 that District 5 currently is right now, they would actually be getting more representation for their one voice on the council than would the person who lives in the 83,000 or 84,000 district. So just remember that when we're talking about having more in the district or having less, it seems to me that one of the things that we're wanting to do is reduce the size of 7 somewhat. It's the 87,000 population on this map anyway, so there's numbers to give to reduce any urban settings that are on here. So I think that there's an opportunity to achieve that. I also want to remind us that, and again, it's not a statement of judgment, it's just an observation. Many of the things that we're talking about where, the people in this district are going to have a problem with being broken up, or the people in this district are not, those are absolutely all the things that, all the statements we would expect in any redistricting discussion. And so if we are talking about fixing West County, it is going to involve some changes in other aspects of the county that people aren't going to gravitate towards or want. I don't know if that's going to be our proposal or not, but I just want us to be mindful of the fact that if we are as committed, for 2 meetings we talked about fixing the western portion of the county. If we fix the western portion of the county, the eastern portion, southern portion, and northern portions are all going to be impacted by that fix. So we just need to be careful about, if we're going to fix it, but we're not going to change this, or this, which means we don't really have much to fix to get it taken care of. So just as we're going through it.
Sure. Commissioner Fleckenstein?
So that's all true. And certainly, I think any of the communities are going to recognize that from time to time there's going to be some change. Your point about representation, I think, is an excellent one, because I think if when you're talking about representing a larger geographic district versus one that's very densely populated, you're talking about 2 different opportunities for a representative to do their representing there. If you've got a larger jurisdiction, it actually makes sense for them to have a slightly smaller population, let's say, because of the number, the places they've got to go, the distance they've got to travel, the amount of places that their district extends, and the diversity even in a place like South County where that's going to come with that. At the same time, yeah, you might have another district that has a bunch of more people, the raw number, but when you're talking about densely populated communities like you are in the North County and in West County and things like that, it actually still is easier for a representative to represent more people if they're more densely together. Mm-hmm. And while there's going to be changes, certainly, I think anything that is going to, I loved the concept that Vice Chairman Snow put out where he said, I played with this and I'm looking at how do we tell the story of Anne Arundel County. Well, I think one of the ways you tell the story of Anne Arundel County, even now as we've grown and even now what we anticipate is, hey, we've got this great, vibrant, historic, rural South County. And I think that needs to stay as intact as it possibly can. And I think most people down there would agree with that. But that's also going to convey to something like Pasadena, Chesapeake, Lakeshore, Northeast. I think if you're going to have that kind of a change, you're not going to kind of keep those communities together and sort of tell that story, right? If you're to break, and I understand looking at this map, I'm sure all of us who live in different areas can say, well, wait a second, that really screws up Odenton or it screws up something else. And obviously we're going to consider that as well. But to plug in something that's going to be that drastic, that's really going to break up those neighborhoods and really kind of break up the story of Anne Arundel County, I can just see there being a lot of problems with that representation.
Commissioner Hengleiter.
I just had a quick question for planning and zoning. I appreciate you guys putting this together so quick, and I totally understand typographical errors, but which number are we basing these off of? You have district and population, and they both have, okay, these ones there. Thank you.
Another question for Commissioner Hengleiter, noting the concern for South County. At what point does South County no longer be South County? I was looking at the map there, and it seems like, at some point I would imagine there would be concerns that now you have, not South County, part of the 7, council
Well, it
district.
depends on how far south you go. As the person who lives in the Dragon's Foot down there, that it kind of varies. But generally, Davidsonville, Edgewater, and South is, to most South County people, what we would consider South County. Sometimes, Reba area, that area that's a little bit more rural on the Annapolis side and in the Annapolis zip code.
And then to what degree, when there are concerns as we reach north, to what degree does the community express concern about no longer being rural?
I think that desire that South County is not just to keep South County, it's to keep the district that South County presides in as a rural district. It's not necessarily the location of it. Obviously, it has to be compact and continuity, but it's more so the desire for like properties.
And of the maps that you've seen so far, the two, actually three technically, do we have the small adjustment plan as part of this? I'm wondering if we could get some of your, maybe we can, over the next few minutes, you can think about it, but I'd be interested to get some of your feedback on what you see in each of the versions of the map that are concerning or perhaps good from each of them, so that the goal, I feel like I'm hoping that the goal here is to reach a consensus, right? Everyone's going to walk away unhappy, ideally, right? We're trying to get, the different things that we're pushing for, but if we are able to come up with something that we are generally all feeling pretty good about it, I think that getting your input on what you liked, what you particularly didn't like, that would help me as I inform some of my thoughts on what direction we might go. Does that sound good? So maybe over the next few minutes. And then, did I see Commissioner Kaufman? No? Okay. Can we review the original map, the small adjustments? Is that what we're calling it? Adjustment Plan 4 or Adjustment Plan 1? Simple adjustment.
There are 4, Commissioner Snow, so yeah, I don't know if you want to go through each one of them individually.
So does anyone kind of remember which of the simple adjustment plans that we were least uncomfortable with?
I think it was 4.
I thought it was 4 too. Can we review 4 just real quick? And if you don't mind, can you just quickly highlight a few of the adjustments that were made, just like 3 or 4 of the bigger adjustments?
Yes, Mark Burt from Planning and Zoning. Some of the bigger changes were to District 2 moving west, into areas of District 1 and District 4. It shrank a little bit on the north, taking the neighborhood right below BWI, and in the northwestern corner of District 2. District 3 did take a little piece out of District 2 on the...
If it's possible, I'm sorry, David Kaufman, if it's possible, instead of, if we could talk about the communities that it's absorbing or not absorbing, that would be more helpful for me to contextualize.
Sure, let me switch maps to the interactive map. And we're going to number 4. So some of the communities that are affected. So we have Glen Burnie here that just a little piece of Glen Burnie is in District 1. That there's not much there. This community here, the Hanover community, the northern piece of the Hanover community did come in out of District 2 and into District 1. And this community right here. This piece of the Severn community came into District 2.
I'm sorry, portion of what community?
This is the Severn.
What parts of Severn is that?
This is from Plan 2040, so it would be the neighborhoods in this area right here. Have the map.
Is that a street? Yeah, what are some of
Yeah, we can zoom into the streets. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's New Disney. Okay.
Carriage Pines at Lake Village.
Mm-hmm. It looks like the communities of Carriage Pines, Lake Village, are at Lake Village, Southern Ridge, Providences, Strawberry Hills, Riviera Heights.
Let's go scroll up, go a little more.
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
You're welcome. And any other questions about the communities?
Yeah. Commissioner Snow, if I may?
Sure. Yes, go ahead.
David Kaufman. This is, in this particular map, the furthest deviation north is what, 2.23%? No. Which column, there's a deviation and then there's a percentage deviation. It's the percentage deviation column we're looking at.
Okay.
Is the percentage deviation column of its current population or from, so if you go to the adjustment plan, the map, not that one, the map one, one previous, sorry.
That's good.
In the slide.
Sorry, in the slide deck.
Okay.
Did we get the?
Yep, in this, so we've got a deviation here of 1.72, but the population is 87. This one's an 85, but it's got a 2.23 deviation. I'm trying to understand what and then that's got 1,000, and that's 5.
So it's deviation from the ideal population of 83,633.
So why is this deviation higher at 85,000 than this one that's at 87,000 at 172?
I'd have to go back and look at the base data. It could,
Is it possible, Mark, that it's from the previous numbers from the last census of 2010? As opposed to what the population is now?
I think the issue is the number that's in the column that says deviation. It's 5.01. That can't be right. It should be a big number, like 3,000 something. So I think that's where that's why the percentage comes out a little funky. Is there something about that number? That 5 point.
I think the next table had it accurate.
Yeah, I think that's where the issue. Because I think you're right. I think it's deviation from the ideal.
Yes. That's a good catch. Commissioner Wadi?
Thank you. I was wondering, Mark, I'm sorry. I was just wondering if you could show the Furnace Branch, the northeastern part of District 2 in that map, in number 4. Furnace Branch and Dorsey Road. Ritchie Highway.
am I connected?
We received a public comment from an individual who has young people that live in the area who is concerned about his representation.
Mr. Wadi, where in the map are you referring to? Here's Glen Burnie Heights. Oh, sorry.
So it's still Road. District 2? I'm sorry.
Yeah, District 2 here. Here's
okay.
Baltimore Annapolis Boulevard, Ritchie Highway.
Okay. And then compared to the current district?
The current district's in red on the map.
Lord,
so District 2 is right here.
stays the same.
And if you're looking at like right in this area, we're looking.
That's adjustment plan 3. That's 3.
Are we supposed to be on 4 or 3? The 4 does change in 4. Sorry, I had it on 3 slide. I was on the wrong slide.
No, that's
my
fine.
apologies.
That's fine. It helps me to prepare.
Yeah, I appreciate it. My apologies.
I appreciate it. Okay, so District 2 comes. District 3 is this. That's all I had. We did just look at this one. We did look at this part.
Yeah.
Where are you? I think this is where,
Right on.
It's like jumping hole. Yeah. Where that Walmart is, the Walmart, Dollar Tree, that shopping center. There's a new townhouse development that was built right there.
Commissioner Telford.
Larry Telford, just a few comments. I think I'm echoing sort of from various reviews of this. The biggest problem I have with Plan 7, and I think this has been brought up by a couple of different members, is it starts really distorting Districts 1, 3, and 5. And I think we've talked about that. I just want to echo that concern. Going to Plan, say, 6, which is sort of fixing Plan 5, I'd caution everyone a little bit about being concerned about a district that's 80,000 versus 85 versus 87 versus 82 or something like that, only because a congressional district has 780,000 people, and a member of the county council that's, I believe, a full-time staffer, I'm pretty confident can handle 80, 85,000 people, just because, as we can see from our audience tonight, there's only so many people that are interacting with their member of the council anyway. I just want to thank Planning and Zoning for Adjustment Plan 6, making the changes to 5. Is there any way we can, other than staring at that, find out exactly how things changed? Is there anything like written down that can show we moved communities from 5 to 3 or 6 to 5 or something like that? Or is it something we just have to do on our own with the software?
Christina Pompo with Planning and Zoning. We don't have that at this time. I mean, it was all we could do to get these maps done.
Okay, thanks.
And, I mean, as Mark and I are looking through this, not only do we have the tables next to the map needing some revision, there are some other mapping issues we need to look at, so I think tomorrow we need to spend the day proofing the work and then getting final copies out to you all. One thing I would still like to do this evening is to have Mark walk you through how to work with the Esri interactive web app, so you all know how to use it, how to turn layers on and off. I think that would be super helpful.
Commissioner Kaufman.
Yeah, totally agree. And I also want to make sure that there isn't any misinterpretation of the questioning of information as not acknowledging and recognizing the Herculean task we've put before you. And that is not a position of criticism, that there are potential errors. So I don't want that to be...
Mr. Kaufman, we are critically looking at the information and criticizing ourselves, so don't worry, okay?
I appreciate that. But it does speak to the timeline. I just want to reinforce this. But the second thing, and I have to put this out here, with all 4 of the original plans, I cannot reconcile Crofton being part of District 7 in every single one of those plans. Crofton is not characteristically part of District 7. Crofton is a community with Wall Chapel. Crofton is a portion of West County that is not characteristically similar to District 7. And I understand why, I understand the math part of that, but in the representation part of that, in all 4 of those maps, Crofton is part of District 7, and I just don't.
Do you consider Lothian to be representative of District 7 and a part of District 7, like in terms of its rural nature and,
I would definitely describe Lothian as very different than Crofton.
Mm-hmm. Is it similar to the coast? I mean, there's different parts of District 7.
It's really the population density and commercial activity.
Okay.
For me. I mean, again, I'm not a planner's owner, but I mean, when I drive through Crofton, I feel a whole lot different than I do when I get on Route 2. And not good, bad, it's just different. It's just a different character. And I just think that the needs of District 4 with Crofton in a sense where District 4 includes Crofton makes sense to me, where a representative would be serving more similar needs. That's
Commissioner Hangleiter?
So there are 3 different areas of South County that are not as rural as others. Lothian is actually, with the exception of the Wasons Corner area, Lothian is probably one of the most rural of the South County zip codes. Most of Lothian is all farmland. I want to respond to Mr. Snow's request in regards to looking at all the maps and what is my opinion as a person from District 7. And maps 1 through 4 are pretty much leave District 7. There's a little bit extra carved into there, but it is still leaving Crofton in District 7, which is what people are saying, is that Crofton is not as rural. At one point, Crofton was much more rural, but they've had a lot more development there. So 1 through 4, I'll pretty much leave it alone. 5 looks amazing, but it is unfortunately a little light. The population would be hard to account for, but as it does state in everything that we've had, as long as there's other reasons, there are ways, it could possibly be approved above or below that 5% deviation. Plan 6 does help. It does look like they've taken out some of Crofton. I apologize, it's pretty small there. But it also has, Plan
6.
Yeah, it was Plan 6 said it does still have it to where that our district is a little heavy. So I did the math, and on that one, it was around 8,500 people that could be moved out of our district into another district and still be able to classify that area as rural. And the other one was 7,859 for District 7 in order to balance it out and reach that 5% below the standard.
Thank you. That's actually very helpful. So I would like to just kind of summarize the maps that we reviewed, just so that we kind of know what we're talking. We first reviewed Adjustment Plan 6, which is the shaking everything up and just restructuring the entire council districts. Adjustment Plan 7, which prioritizes and focuses on the interest of keeping Council District 7 rural. And then Adjustment Plan 4, which is the simple adjustment plan that the commission broadly agreed was the, of the 4 presented adjustment plans was least unfavorable. Maybe that's the way we'll say it. So that is noted, and I do think that we would like to go through a quick demo of using the software just so that people are able to do so. And if I see people have their laptops, we can follow along. Is that accurate? So I would encourage the commissioners to do so. And if you guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask planning and zoning if you want to follow along.
Mark Burt, Planning and Zoning. So when commissioners, if you would like to follow along, there is a login that you have to do. If you remember the original login that I sent you, your first name _ last name. If you do need your password, I can provide that also. You would go to the ArcGIS login and use that there.
You already emailed them their passwords, right?
So I'm going to log in the way I would log in here. Again, when you log in, it takes you to our homepage if you log in from the link there. Click on groups and you'll go to the Charter Revision Commission or Commission group. And from that, it should be the second item in recently added content is the Charter Revision Commission Adjustment Plans web map. Click on that and then.
Is that the link directly that you sent to us?
Yeah, it might send you directly to the map.
Good.
It might take you directly to the map if you would log in that way. Okay, once the map opens up, you'll see it opens up with the county and the current council districts in red. You can change the base map if you would like using the base map selector. We have a couple different base maps you can use.
Can you highlight for them which base maps you think could be most helpful?
Some of the base maps that would be helpful would be the image hybrid. That would have the aerial imagery and road names. Navigation gives you that Google Maps style feel. It also includes street names and places. Streets, it has place names in it and street names. OpenStreetMap is the OpenStreetMap view. These all have the street names and places. When you do open this map, the imagery is the default base map. So you like to switch it to hybrid imagery. If you do change the base map, it will be at the bottom of your contents. You can change the opacity or the transparency of the imagery. Click on it and you can use the 3 dots and go to transparency and change. It can make it easier to see your data in the map. In the map itself, you will see there are a group of layers in here that you can turn on and off by checking the box beside the layer name to have a blue check mark. Included in the contents pane are several layers. The top one is the current council districts, which is active. You can toggle that on and off by checking the check mark there. The adjusted census blocks are not visible right now. If you zoom into the map, they will activate. They have a threshold set on them so they don't take up too much of the map. The community boundaries from Plan 2040 are also available to you, along with high school districts, middle school districts, and elementary school districts. To view the different adjustment plans, you can toggle them on and off. They will turn on. They do have a slight transparency to them. If you would like to see them in full transparency, get to the 3 dots of more options, click on transparency, and take that slider bar and move it to the right or left.
Say that one more time, please.
Sure.
Where do I find transparency?
Yeah, if you hover over your layer, you'll get that more options on the far right. Okay.
I got you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tell them the bulb's at about 60%.
Yeah. All the adjustment plans, all the plans are set to about a 60% transparency, so you can change that if you would like. Zooming into the map, you can use your center wheel or center button to zoom in. or you can use the plus and minus key buttons on the map to zoom in. The home button in the middle of the plus and minus will take you back to that default extent, showing you the county view. Zooming in on the map, you can see that the census blocks do activate. You can click on the map anywhere in the map, and it will identify the census block first. And if there are any other layers that you click on, you will have a right arrow in your pop-up in the top right. You can click that for the next feature. All of the districts will have all of the data attached to it. So you'll be able to go in and see, if you want to see what that target deviation was, what the different populations are for that proposed district. It'll also give you the current council district. So we can turn on the, if you would like, we can turn on the community boundaries.
Show them a school district and that they get an arrow and they can find out the name.
Yeah, no,
Okay. Sorry.
that's okay. You're excited.
I know, I love this.
So if we turn on, the more layers you turn on, like if you turn on a high school district, you might not see it in the map. It's a blue dotted line. You can click anywhere on the map, and again, you'll get that right arrow on the top of your pop-up, and just you can cycle through the different things that are selected in the map. And every time you click the next feature, it will activate that feature, turn it into, activate it in blue.
The name's at the bottom.
The high school name, I have to adjust these pop-ups. The names of the districts are feature _ NA. That will be changed to say school name or school district name. You do have the ability to filter. I'll quickly show you how to do that. So if you wanted to filter for a specific high school, hover over your high school districts, and the fourth button over is the filter button. It looks like a yellow piece of paper with a funnel on it. You can click that, and if you want to find out if you know a school district name that you want to filter to and zoom to on the map, you can go down to that feature NA and then click unique, and it'll come down with a drop down of all the high school names. So if we wanted to filter for just Arundel High School, we select that name and click apply filter. Now Arundel High School is the only active school district on here. And I'm losing it. To find it, you can click on your attribute table. All right.
Commissioner Snell.
Yes, Commissioner Kaufman.
Because you're talking about school districts, I just want to do the mathematical correlation here. We have 7 council districts, currently 13, about to be 14 high schools. So crossing high school districts is probably less consequential than perhaps maybe even looking at some of the middle or elementary school issues that may come up, because there's just no way you're not going to have crossing of districts, because there's going to be twice as many high schools as there will be council districts.
So there's twice as many, again, Steve Kai, Ziegler Planning and Zoning, twice as many districts. Also, they're constantly changing in different ways, shapes, and forms, and that will continue into the future. It's interesting to see it, but I'm not sure that it has significant value in your effort in coming up with recommendations on how to redistrict for councilmatic areas.
Certainly. David Kaufman, just we in acknowledgement, I know Mr. Waddy's referenced constituent input with regards to where there, a school that or a portion of a district that may be Glen Burnie that's in District 3 that really does identify its community with, like, those are the kind of minutia discussions to have, but not a driver in terms of setting lines.
Correct.
Quick question, Tori Snow. If we make changes with the layers, are they exclusive to us? So
Mark
we could theoretically break your maps. That's the application administrator and me coming out.
I don't believe that you have the rights to do that in our portal. I think you just have viewer rights.
Is there? Well, you're not done with your presentation, so I'll let you
That
finish.
was pretty much all the functionality in there.
Okay.
There's a measure function. If you would want to print a map, there's a print function. If you here's the measure function. If you would want to measure anything on the map, you can do it either an area measure or a straight line linear measure. You do that. You just click on the map to start and just click around. Yep. So there's a different, if you do have a specific address or a specific place that you would want to look up in these different plans and toggle on and off to see where that falls within different plans, you can add that address into the search bar. So just an example, if you start typing and enter a street name in, it'll start auto-populating.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm. And then eventually it'll get to where you need to be.
Sounds good. All right, so we actually have access to the tools. Everybody's confirmed their access to the application. Does anyone have any questions about the tool that we should ask before planning and zoning? None? Okay. So that actually kind of covers the review of the maps. Obviously, I think I'm going to need some time to digest what's been presented. I would be interested, while everyone's kind of looking at it, are we able to come to some sort of consensus about the plans that we're interested in pursuing further and perhaps eliminate some plans? Because I see that we have Plan 1, 2, 3 simple adjustment. Are we okay moving those to like an archive format, or would you like to keep them available? And I'll solicit input from the commission.
Vice Chairman Snow,
Oh, sure, yes.
Mark Burt, Planning and Zoning. I would like to say that this still is under development. We did notice that the simple plan, or the plan number 4, didn't load right. It loaded as the county in the current districts and not the adjusted districts that we've done. So we're going to work to get that updated and the correct scenario in there.
Do you have the functionality to take some of the maps that we are not that interested in and putting them, like keeping them available but maybe not on the view? Is that something you could do, or put them in like a folder or something?
We can leave them in the map. You can turn them on and off, or we can just remove them altogether.
So it's either they're there or they're not. Got it. Okay. Commissioner Kaufman.
David Kaufman, I can say easily that the work that you've done in Adjustment Plan 6 as a starting point for me captures community character issues that I believe we miss in the other in the first 4 maps, but I am interested in seeing what 4 looks like if you're indicating that what we're seeing is not that.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Kaufman. The map that is in your presentation is the correct one.
Okay. I would say that the qualifier for Adjustment Plan 6 is to shave down, as Commissioner Hagleiter suggested, to shave down that population where it makes sense within the top portion. I guess whether the Crownsville or the immediately adjacent to Annapolis, somehow or another where we can reduce the population in 7 to. It seems like we're doing a lot of work to make it rural, and we ended up making it bigger in the rural map, and it felt like if we can if we're at 87,000 currently in this incarnation, we can make it more rural by reducing the square footage or the overall size of the district. But I feel like Pasadena is preserved. I feel like, personally, I feel like Annapolis and Cape St. Clair are more similar than Annapolis and Crownsville, and so I like how it's grouped in this setting. I really do believe very strongly that Crofton and Whitechapel are a community that would be united and contiguous. And then 1 and 2, I honestly don't know where the lines, I can't speak to where these lines are, but as a starting point for me, this represents the kind of county that I think, and as I mentioned last time, it gives us some flexibility in how District 5 sits in there. Sorry, am I calling it right? Yes. With how District 5 sits in there, it gives us opportunity to morph and evolve the boundaries of each of the districts around it as populations change in the future.
Thank you. Commissioner Fleckenstein.
Of the 7 that we've got in this plan, the only one that I would recommend, and one that I wouldn't consider at all and would say if we're trying to limit them down, the only one I would say to get rid of would be 7, and not the aspect of keeping District 7 rural. I think there's a good sense on the commission that most of us feel that that's an important part of it, and I realize that's part of the name, but just because of the way 5 and 3 and those things go together. So that would be the only one I would say. From my perspective, I think we could eliminate, only because I would never get behind that map.
It's like a cooking competition. Commissioner Hanglater.
I would agree with you. I think that I love the idea of District 7 being separate, but it does break up so much more in the county, and I think that's what the last Charter Review Commission presented. Mr. Burt, is there any way that you can briefly tell us on Plan 6, that portion of Crofton that is included in District 7, what the population of that portion, that triangle that you have there?
A lot. It's a very, very, very densely populated area. We've tried to move this part of Crofton out of District 7 in several different iterations. Remember when I was talking the other night, how there were like the middle ones that I threw in the garbage because they just weren't working out for me? That's the main sticking point right there.
Okay.
You remove that, it drops the population of District 7 tremendously. To the point where you are moving way north with it, like in the other iterations.
Okay.
It's
tremendously 20,000.
It's I can start to click on some of the census blocks here for you can. There's 200. There's 200 in that one. I mean, what I'll do is I'll get the population for this area and send it to everyone, or send it to Ms. Corby, and she can put it out.
It's not moving it from 87,000 to 78,000. It's really dropping it.
Yes, and conversely, it's adding area into 4, which maybe doesn't have the room to take all of it.
Yeah.
But according to this map, I understand that they don't have room to take all of it, but they do have room to take a little bit of it, because they're a little bit light, and 7 is very heavy.
Yes, it's true. Christina Pompa with OPZ, as a planner, when you look at that area, because of the golf course, and to me, it's very hard to break that up without starting to make some divisions that really don't make sense. Okay. That was my planner perspective when we looked at that area earlier today.
Thank you.
That's good input. And just from my perspective, obviously I'm biased for Adjustment Plan 6, but I would just like to emphasize that I think it's important that we're communicating our priorities here. Thank you, Commissioner Hanglater, for making clear what you're thinking. From my perspective, West County is big, and I think that the fact that we are looking at additional growth in the county it just makes all the more sense for us to at least start thinking about what that looks like from a logical perspective. And so, obviously, I think that that's something that has to be considered. I'm very concerned about anything that continues to leave Maryland City with a relatively diminished voice, and even some of the other communities that are over there. So that's just my perspective of the maps that are out there.
I think that's correct. I have a question for you. Are you thinking that if we're looking at relative population now, that it makes more sense to keep, let's say, a District 4 here, that if I'm looking at Plan 6 as 82,000 versus the 87,007, are you of the mindset that it makes sense to keep it slightly smaller now because there is going to be anticipated growth that's going to bring that number up?
Not 100%. I mean, there's a little bit of that there, but I think that in Anne Arundel County, the appetite for growth is so little. I don't anticipate a great deal of growth over time. I feel like there's tremendous backlash just against the growth that happened in the past couple of election cycles. So I don't mean, maybe planning and zoning can speak further to this. I'm sure there will be growth, but I'm thinking that the brakes are coming on for development.
Sure, real quick, Steve Kaiser, Planning and Zoning. We're growing at less than 1% a year now, about 0.07%. And that translates into about 2,000 new building permits a year. Approximately 200 to 300 of those are age restricted, but our growth has been very, very steady. The average annual increase in growth is declining because we're sticking with basically the same number of building permits per year. So there will be growth, but it's at a very, our perspective, I know that's not shared with other members of the community, our perspective is we're growing very slowly.
And we're not going to follow the same breakneck speed that we've seen over the past 10 years or so.
Well, we haven't had, this is over the last 10 years is what we've been averaging. There's a perception that it's much higher. The reality is it isn't. You have to go back to the 70s and 80s to get, much higher numbers of growth. Yeah, think about it this way. At less than 1% a year, that's about 2,000 new homes. In order, if you're going to go to 2% a year, you're at really 4,000. 3% a year, you're at 6,000. We don't anticipate ever returning to anywhere near those numbers.
Commissioner Telford.
My first blush reaction to these plans is that I like Plan 4 and 6, obviously pending the ability to take a good look at these.
Commissioner Waddy? Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to belabor this issue. I would, after the presentation, like to represent well, first of all, any other questions for maps?
Just I'm sorry, David Kaufman. In District 1, I'm seeing a portion in Adjustment Plan 6. I'm seeing almost like a little brown peninsula that's at the northern end of District 3, and I'm just wondering why that would be captured if there's a. If it makes more sense to be there as opposed to at the southern end, that would also be taking out of 3. But I can't speak to what that actually, what parcel of land that is.
It's the Coast Guard area. Sorry, Mark Hart, Planning and Zoning. It's the Coast Guard area, so it's more attached to this the Army Depot. It very well might even be the same census block. That might be why it was brought in.
So there's a road across the top.
Yeah, there is a road that goes across the top here. I'm just trying to see if it's the same census block. It's 2 different blocks, so that could very easily just been a mapping error.
All right. So thinking about next steps, if we continue on the pace that we are on, our first public meeting. I'm pulling my calendar here. So as I understand, I don't see that we have a commission meeting scheduled for next week, do we? Wow. And that's because we have conflicts, people out of town, things like that, which means that if we are going to be prepared for our public meeting, which is scheduled for the 15th, 13th. Wow. That means that so if I'm understanding this correctly, even if the group comes together, a smaller group comes together with a map, whatever's presented before the public will be presented before the commission has had a chance to review that finalized product. Am I understanding that correctly?
And based on the current schedule, sure, but if we get some things together, I'm sure we could get 4 or 5 of us on a Zoom call to look at them and say, okay, hey, let's present these to the public and give them 4 or 5 days to do that, couldn't we, Ms. Cordy?
Sure, yeah. I mean, any amount of time we can get them posted would be helpful. But then again, remember too that at what they did in 2011 was they began with allowing, general comments too, which could help. You never know. But anyway, that's just an idea.
Sure. Well, there's a fair likelihood that once we start hearing from the public, even if we present them 2 or 3 maps, that we may say, okay, we're going to go back and change certain aspects of the map, right? I mean, we may hear from people with some ideas that we don't know yet. I don't think we're presenting, at least it's not my understanding that we're trying to present final maps that we're going to say, okay, public, tell us, and we're going to vote on 1 or 2 or 3 of these to send to the council. I think even once we hear from people, we would still have some time if there's some significant input that would change any of our opinions on a proposed map, but we could still make those changes based on that before we submitted them to the council in January.
We could not because, well, we could if we work Christmas week.
Fair.
And I'm not doing that. I'm not. So what this is going to mean is that the public will get to deliberate on these maps more than we will have. The deadline is December the 31st. We meet, the small group, right, meets tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, come up with something, assuming that there's some deliberation, there's some consensus that would be distributed to the commission. We put together an ad hoc meeting sometime next week in the peak of Christmas season to try to get people together in which we are guaranteed not to have maximum participation from the commission. And then it goes before, or there is a public hearing on the 13th, a week before Christmas. The second public hearing on the 18th, Thursday, that's right, we did move it to Thursday. Still less than a week before Christmas. And then we get the public input. We don't meet to even talk about the public input unless we meet the week of Christmas. And then if we are all magically in agreement on what we present to the council, then we meet after Christmas, before New Year's, and send that to the council to meet the deadline. That is obscene. Completely unreasonable.
It is obscene that we had to deal with this situation that we've dealt with over the past year. It's been very obscene that we've had to deal with this emergency situation and act in an emergency manner, despite the feeling that, people are not living in an emergency. We've been in an emergency. And this is part of that emergency since the census has delayed. 1, it was the way it was collected. 2, it was delayed. And the emergency has taken place. And so I'm of the mind that, there's a time for people to act in a way that recognizes that there's an emergency.
Can you help me understand the emergency of submitting a map by December 31st? What would be the dramatic impact of extending our time to deliberate this?
I think, well, first of all, I don't think that there's an emergency to submit a map. I think the emergency is around the census data that was released.
Understood, but what is pressing us to submit the map by the 31st?
for the council to be able to approve it by the date that has been given to us by the Office of Law and just the Board of Elections regarding the February 22nd deadline. So that's...
But that would mean that we are acting for the purposes of politics and not representation.
I think politics is representation, and representation is politics. And I don't necessarily believe that there's going to be, as I said earlier, a difference between what happens in February and what happens in April or June from a public standpoint.
I would like more time. If I'm going to put my name on this, I would like more time to deliberate, to discuss, to put out something high quality. Like, being able to serve on this commission is a huge honor, right? It is something that we get to do once every 10 years. And regardless of whatever happens in the future, like, my name is going to be on one of the most haphazardly rushed maps probably in county. Has there ever been a time that the maps have been put together and adjusted so quickly? I mean, maybe with simple adjustments, perhaps. I don't know. Has there ever been a time that it has gone at this level of speed?
And yet, they've maintained a similar look and status and almost uniformity across the government since they've been around.
Understood.
And, there's been the idea that this is going to change, to me, is not practical. So
Okay.
I think we need, like I said, to look at the adjustment, the simple adjustment plans that we've already put out there. Also, we don't have to put out one plan. And I think that your suggestion, your plan that you put out in terms of the philosophy around creating this new districts for the county to give this a different story, telling a different narrative than what the county has told about itself for the past, since these districts were created, it's a philosophical point for our community to think about. And I think that with that philosophical point, it's going to be. We have time to debate it. I think that the charter is where we need to get into our discussions about who has power, who has representation, and how to increase and improve representation.
Understood. All right. Yes, Ms. Pompa.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. I just wanted to give you some perspective as a planner, just from my own 27 years of experience. So in the planning world, typically when we're doing long-range planning, everything goes out for public review. And that doesn't mean that as planners, we don't try and put absolutely what we think is the best product out to go to public review, but we expect that the public will shape the ultimate product. Because if that doesn't happen, then we're not listening to the public. And so from the planning perspective, we have a little bit of cleanup that needs to happen. We need to go back and check some things with clear heads, because we were working at, there's like regular pace, there's kind of fast pace, there's super fast pace. We were at super fast pace today. We want to go back and check everything. But I also think we have 7 alternatives that are out. 4 of them were simplified plans. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like 4 for a simplified version. Okay, maybe we need to do some tweaking. 6 also seem to have some people rallying behind it. We want to look at District 7, see if we can reduce the number of people. We will go back and do those things. But just from the planning perspective and how we do things, because everything goes to public comment, there's less pressure to put something perfect out the first time. Because if it's perfect in your mind and the public comes in and tears it up, which they could do. I mean, it's happened, believe me, in public hearings, products I've had over the years. So I just want to give you that perspective, that maybe don't get so hung up. The other thing is on the schedule, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but let's keep progressing. Let's see where we are. I don't know, sitting here right now, I don't know that you can make the February 26th deadline, but let's keep progressing. I do think, based on where we were from the first meeting, what we've shown you tonight, we've made massive strides. And, we are using a good software product. I think we have good products for you, and we will, once we do this little tinkering tomorrow.
Commissioner Coffin?
David Coffin. Two questions. From a legal perspective, is there any, if the maps are unchanged, if our commission doesn't make a recommendation, and I think we've already discussed this, I just want to revisit the discussion. We don't make a recommendation until February 27th. If the mindset is that we're taking a simple adjusted and we're just tweaking, are there any districts as they sit right now, unaffected, no lines changed, that put us out of compliance with the law with regards to holding an election in 2022 as the districts currently sit?
Lori Blair, Classmeyer, Deputy County Attorney. My understanding of the numbers is that currently everything is within the 10% deviation. That's my understanding.
That was what I understood, but if that is not the case, that is an important piece of information for us to factor into the discussion. When I looked at that first slide, I thought that we were all within, but that's.
And that's,
today's the day for me to be wrong on that.
and that said, I'm not sure that even if they were out of compliance, whether there would be anything that would compel you to act before the 2022 election based on timing of the charter and the state laws and all of that. So, I mean, I can certainly look at that question, but I don't believe it's even an issue. If it is, we can certainly revisit that.
Yes.
Mr. Snow, could I ask Ms. Glassmeyer a question?
Of course.
Ms. Glassmeyer, when we talk about the deviation and we talk about 10%, we start first with the ideal district population. And so how are we working with that 10%? Are we saying that it's a 10% deviation from the ideal population, either up or down? Because to me, that's a 20% deviation. And what we presented in our base case scenario showed that District 1 and District 4 exceeded what would have been the 5% in either direction, which comprises 10%.
I think it's 10% in one direction. And I can go back and look at the case law on that, but I believe it's 10% deviation.
Mark Burt with Planning and Zoning. When we do it in the software, it's five above, 5 below. And that's an equal 10% deviation total.
But I think the deviation that we're talking about in looking at it for purposes of are we complying with the law is deviation from each other. So how they are currently populated, and how they, not how they deviate from the ideal, but how they currently deviate from each other. And I thought that deviation was within 10%. And it may be that somebody was looking at the wrong numbers when they told me that, but I can certainly, I can look at that question.
And my understanding, and again, just because it's my understanding doesn't make it accurate, but my understanding was that 5% was the target and that 10% was the legal threshold.
That's what the courts have said, yes.
And that, if that is the case, then from my position, and if I'm one of 7, when I say that, I really mean this. If I'm one of 7 on this position, I'm fine being that minority. But if it's one of 7 and we're forcing through a tweak map, it seems odd to me that we're going to ask our staff and all of us to be 2 to 3 days a week during the holiday season to do a map that doesn't do much, but to tweak and modify and adjust so that we could, like, if that's what we're going to do, we probably wouldn't need 3 meetings a week to do that. And so if that's not what we're going to do, then there's also not a reason to do all of that so abruptly, in my opinion. But if there is a legal consequence to us having the 2022 election with the current district populations, then our task is a different task entirely, and we all signed up for the commission. So I'm happy to accept that responsibility, but it's a pretty distinct difference in task from my position.
Commissioner Fleckenstein.
Just to kind of get back on topic as to what you were wanting us to discuss, and I realize we've kept everybody late Monday, and I think we'd hope to not do it as well on Wednesday. Again, my perspective is, yes, we're being rushed. Certainly not meeting in Christmas week is 100% the way to go. I feel like we've got time to ask for more time if we need to do that. And my feeling is we should stay on task to the extent that we can. I think that generally when there's goals and deadlines and things are coming up, it does make people work better and focus better as opposed to putting things off. It allows us to get something before the public, and it allows us to start hearing from the public more quickly. And, like after the 13th or the 16th, if we decide that we can't get it done, or that based on everything we need to ask more time, like I say, we've got that time to then say to the council, hey, we do need more time. Can we take you up on your offer to extend the deadline? I don't see any harm in continuing to try to do it. And if we decide we can't, like if we had to make a decision right now tonight, if the council said, look, tomorrow's your deadline, I got to know, then I would say, let's say we need more time. I just think we've got the time to eventually ask for more time if we need it. And nothing that we've done tonight changes my opinion on that. And again, I think we've made good progress again tonight.
Commissioner Hangleiter?
I agree with your statements. I am a little concerned. I know that as we are coming into the holiday season, I don't think we're going to have much public testimony because everyone is as busy as they are at this time of year. I'm also concerned that we get one shot at this, and that is if we submit something on December 30th and the council does not get 5 votes, then we didn't accomplish, or we weren't able to complete it. And that's my fear, is that we spent all this time, we did everything we could. We've all, I'm sure, spent many hours outside of this room working on this as well to not accomplish the goal.
Well, I think we've had a lot of positions taken. I guess I'd like to ask the commission how we'd like to proceed. I mean, I would feel comfortable with a motion to take a vote on a disposition. I want to be on the record that I am firmly opposed to rushing through this. And I understand that I feel like, I think we're all in different places right now. I had a, baby through the pandemic and spending time with my little one, and it's given me, I try to be very community involved, and even when I was talking about my involvement here, part of the conversation I had with my family was that we would be able to balance it in, right? And I can fit a couple meetings in, especially, once or twice or 3 times a month, even a weekly meeting. I just want it to be clear that it feels like this entire process, if we proceed at this pace, it kind of robs, I don't know, maybe it's just me with 4 kids, I suppose, is my decision to have a family, I guess. But I feel like it robs me of the opportunity to really be part of that, and specifically the public input. And I understand, that we want to do that. But like I said, even if we get public input, if we want to be responsive to that, if they decide to meet and I am able and having to miss out on that, or someone else is having to miss out on that, that is a challenge for me. So, I mean, maybe it's just sufficient for me airing my grievances and hoping that the members on the council would show clemency and say, please slow down, we'll let you know, to continue on that. But I'll let the issue rest, but I'll leave it to you, Commissioner.
So I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound counterintuitive to everything I've said tonight. I think we had the opportunity a month ago when we discussed this in terms of setting a timeline to not set the timeline we set. We have committed to at least that week of the 11th or the 6th, and there was full disclosure. We know that this Saturday is Mr. Waddy's birthday. I know that because I'm going to New York to celebrate his birthday.
I was willing to work.
No, I know you were. No,
I wasn't.
But to the point, I'm also not going to be on task this Saturday and Sunday because I'm going to be with my daughter in New York. So having said all of that, those were all things that we discussed when we agreed to do the public meetings during that week. I just want to make sure that we are not so driven to meet a timeline that we place that as being the priority of the task. That, for me, is because doing work for work's sake, we all have plenty of work to do, okay? We aren't here to say that we turned in our assignment. We're here because we have an opportunity to have a say in our government. And I don't take that lightly, and I don't take it for granted. So I want us to do what we're going to do. But I'm going to say, and I'll turn, you can mute me after I do this. If our plan looks like Adjustment Plan 6 in any significant way, I am absolutely going to say as ardently as I possibly can that we will not submit that for council, that I do not want us to submit it for council review for the upcoming election, because I can almost guarantee it will not pass. And that would be a failure in anticipation of the reality of taking two incumbent council members, pitting them against each other in an election and asking them to vote on the map to have to run against each other and say, hey, this is a good idea. And that's not fair to put them in that position when it is 1 month before the filing deadline to make decisions. And then it doesn't inform who's going to want to run in a dramatically different map. Like, part of the motion or the sentiment here is to encourage people to run. By the way, telling somebody on February 25th what the map looks like and giving them a day to file isn't going to prompt somebody to say, hey, I think I now represent this community better, so I'm going to now run. So following it out, it just doesn't make sense that we would put that to the council to have to decide before the 26th, because I would almost assuredly guarantee it would not pass.
All right, I think we've discussed it. I think we all have a sentiment. Obviously, whatever happens with the council will happen with the council. Does anyone have any other business?
Vice Chair Snow,
Yes.
Before you adjourn, I just don't want you to get to that part without us discussing the public hearing portion of things, because this is the last meeting before that public hearing, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The last one's scheduled, yes.
Yes. So there's a few important things I need to go over with you, assuming that the public hearings are happening that week, the week of December 13th.
Okay.
Okay. So can we do that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's a couple of questions. One idea I wanted to throw out there is, if you did the December 13th portion of the public hearing in person and you continued the public hearing to December 16th and allowed it to be virtual, you could actually consider that sort of one public hearing. Again, just starting as in person on the 13th, continuing it to the 16th as virtual. So that's one idea I did want to throw out to you to consider. The reason I say that is because looking back at history, you can see that there was some kind of a gap between the two public hearings, right? The first public hearing in 2011 did not involve maps. It just was soliciting general comments, in particular on redistricting. There was a current map displayed for the public, a big giant map, so everybody could look at their current districts and provide comments. So the question for you all is, are we going to plan to have, is it going to be maps or no maps for the public hearings on the 13th and the 16th?
I think the anticipation is we would have a map potentially, or we'd have some different maps for people to look at, right?
I think when we had, I mean, I didn't have the benefit of understanding the format of the previous ones, where I actually really liked the idea of a general comment, again, general comment to inform what we present, but we're not concerned about that at this point in time. So yeah, I feel like we have to do maps at this time.
Okay, so I'm going to have to ask our deputy county attorney to help out here, because my concern is that what maps are you going to have for the public to review if you haven't had an actual meeting with a quorum where you have made a decision on a map?
That's a very good question.
So maybe she doesn't need my help.
Are we limited to 2 public meetings?
Well, you voted on a schedule. You were not limited. You can call as many as you would like. It's just a matter of making that decision together as a commission.
So to remedy that, we would need to schedule an additional meeting for next week.
You would, yeah. Or another option I could come up with is that if you have some maps by December 13th, you could begin the meeting with just your meeting, and you could vote on maps at the beginning of the meeting on the 13th. I believe that would work. And then you would go into the public hearing. Those are 2 distinct portions of a meeting. Would be first, your discussions, any deliberations, and then you open a public hearing and close a public hearing.
I think the point is that the decision on the maps, it has to be, if you're all going to do it together, or a quorum of you are going to do that, make that decision, it has to be part of a public meeting. So,
Commissioner Snow, if I can, sure. My understanding of what we agreed at the last meeting was that tonight, and I think that we've accomplished what we said we were going to do, is that we were going to identify 2 maps that represented generally directions that we were going to take. Map 4 and Map 6 are the 2 maps that, as a commission, we've said tonight warrant additional work. Am I understanding that part correctly? Is that an accurate statement?
I think that is an accurate statement, yes.
Then that is the purpose of having Mr. Telford, Mr. Waddy, and myself be the subgroup that works with planning and zoning to be able to work. Again, I don't want to do anything other than to summarize what I understood we were agreeing to. Then we would be taking what we believe the sentiment of the commission is and providing feedback directly to planning and zoning so that we can have maps not to be the proposals, but to be more accurately representing a concept. I mean, those are 2 different concepts of maps. We have these we have these maps that look more like what we think the consensus of the council or the commission is seeking, and then the public gets to be part of the discussion. Like, we're not voting on a map at the beginning of that meeting because there's no need to vote on a map because we're not approving a map. We're just getting input from people, and that may be the moment in time where the general public has watched these meetings and 6 people come in and all 6 of them tell us that they think that I am absolutely out of my mind supporting what the direction of map 6 is, and we find out that there's no energy behind it whatsoever, and we move in a different direction. But I don't believe that we have to vote on a map, nor do I think that Mr. Telford, Mr. Waddy, or my work on the maps is going to represent a definitive completion of the work. We're going to have that done, and then each of the commission members are going to see with the general public in that meeting and go, that doesn't make any sense. We need to change that too, and that's what the process is. But we don't have the time in the schedule we've created, and I would not advise, because if I'm not mistaken, I think our chairwoman is gone most of the week next week, too. I mean, that's
correct.
That's part of what the dynamic, and I'd hate to see her not be present in the discussions about the creation of this. That was part of the agreement on the schedule, too.
But if we proceed with that schedule, then we do need to meet Christmas week to approve a map.
Or the week after, between Christmas and New Year's.
Right.
So what I thought,
And we can meet virtually for the purpose of agreeing on, in a 15-minute meeting, what it is that we'll present to the council. It doesn't have to be an hour and a half long discussion, 2 hours, 3 hours. We can say, this is our presentation to you, 4-2, what is this, 4-3, and then they can decide. It's their decision. Really, they are the deciders.
Or if we decide at that point that we can't get it done or we do need more time, then I think we can go to the council and say, hey, we need more time.
I appreciate the transparency there. I mean, that's what it feels like, right? Like, the 4-3 majority has determined what the map is going to be, and there's nothing we can do to stop it, right? That's the sense that I get. That's what you just said.
Well, are you talking about? Sorry. I'm saying if we're going to choose something, it can be 6-1. It could be. I was just putting 4-3 out there as the, just the deciding point. Once we make a decision, then it's going to go, whether it's 4-3, 6-2, 6-1, 5-2. Forgive me, it's late, I'm tired. I'm ready to go.
Mr. Snow, Larry Telford, this is a lot different than the previous commission. Are we agreeing to only pick one map to officially submit to the council? Because last time there were multiple submissions, I know.
Yeah, we could do that. It's just rushed, right? I was raised my entire life, never rush through anything. It just goes against my character to rush. I like to think through the implications and understand these things. But in the interest of time, right, we want to keep things moving. We need to schedule a meeting the week before or after Christmas. We need to do that tonight.
if I may, I also, and again, I'm just trying to recall, and Laura, you might remember differently, but my understanding is that we acknowledged that a December 31st date wasn't going to occur, and that there was a discussion about having a meeting the first week of January. The only reason I remember that discussion was because I'm at a conference in Dallas, and I mentioned that I would try to dial in during that week if we were going to meet the week after that first week of January. I am in Chicago during the week after Christmas, again, can dial in, but my understanding was that we were not going to do, out of respect to the staff and out of respect to each of the council or commission members, that we were not going to be doing the meetings during the week after Christmas before New Year's. That was my takeaway. If I missed it, again, please correct me.
So I think that once again, you're highlighting the perils of rushing through all of this. Like when we first made these decisions, I think we were still trying to figure out what exactly we were trying to do. There was a lot of information coming at us, and I remember on the call, well, you don't actually have to meet the deadline, and maybe you do, and just getting I feel like our last meeting, for me, our last meeting was our first actual redistricting meeting that felt productive, like we were actually making progress. So I think that once again, the perils of rushing through, there's just a lot of things that we're not seeing that we're finding out now in hindsight. I think that had I known I was sitting in this position then, I probably would have pushed back much harder on doing 2 public meetings, and I might have thought about the fact, we're going to have a public meeting, and we didn't even schedule anything to think about what the public had to say, right? That's what happens when you rush, right? And I mean, and that's not even taking into account when we come into our session planning and zoning has to incorporate every change and request that we have. So that has to go through a process of getting updated, technically and into the maps and things like that. So again, I think that in the interest of expedience, we need to select a day to review the maps after public feedback. And our options are the week of the 19th, the week of the 26th, and the week of the 2nd.
So if I can just comment, and Ms. Corby can correct me if I'm wrong here on the calendar. I was just looking at the calendar. So the issue becomes, and someone did raise this, that you're not only working towards this February 22nd deadline because it's a filing deadline, but there has to be time for people to decide if they want to file. So if the legislation, so you have to do your report and present it to the council, and the council would have to create the legislation to adopt the new redistricting map. If that legislation is introduced on, January 3rd, it would be heard and could be effective on February 7th. If it's not adopted or introduced until January 18th, then the second meeting in February, which is where it would be considered, is February 22nd, which is the filing deadline, if I'm not mistaken. So the window is tighter than you even think it is, I guess, or that we've even been talking about, because there's only one more. December 6th is the next meeting. There's one on December 20th, and then January 3rd. Is it the 3rd? So that January 3rd meeting, that would be your report completely done, presented. The council has legislation drafted, which is usually done at least a week ahead of time. And in something like this, definitely it needs at least a week, because there's going to be a description of the districts in addition to maps. So I'm questioning, personally sitting here, whether it can be done in a fashion that gives people the consideration of whether they want to run in a readjusted district, even if everything gets done by before January. Well, it would be the week after Christmas is when the legislation would have to be drafted. I mean, Ms. Corby can certainly correct me if she thinks I'm wrong.
You are absolutely right. I will say that we have one thing in our favor. January is a 5-Monday month.
Okay.
And so infrequently we get those. For legislation, there are advertising requirements, and the first advertisement has to appear 14 days before the day that the bill might potentially be passed. So what I'm trying to say is that if the bill was introduced on January 17th, which is
That's a holiday.
sorry, January 18th, there would be time for me to meet the advertising requirements, and we could have the bill come back the first meeting in February still. So there's that bonus. But that would probably be the timeline that we would be looking at if we're sticking to the mandated deadline. It would be a bill introduced on the 18th, because of the holiday. It would come back the first meeting in February. They would have a public hearing, standard legislative procedure, and the council could vote on the bill that night. And if it passes, it goes into effect immediately, right?
With 5 votes.
Yep, 5 votes, sorry. So that would be the whirlwind best case scenario.
And that assumes no amendments to the bill,
So if I could. Steve
which may or may not happen.
So Steve Kizigler, Planning and Zoning Officer. So I think I want to build upon some of the things I'm just hearing, is that one is the potential for amendments, which I would think, Ms. Corby, would be fairly high, and the reproduction of other versions potentially of maps, which will take some period of time. There's also the question of there needs to be a report that accompanies the recommendation. Ms. Corby, who would be preparing the report?
That is a question that still needs to be asked and answered. Typically, it is an attorney.
But the reality is someone will have to spend time producing that document to go. And it's again, it's another one of the factors that takes time.
Sure.
I have a question. Is it safe to say that if the maps are put through and it goes before the council and the vote doesn't pass, right, it doesn't get the 5 votes, that all of this is for nothing? I mean, basically, it would miss the filing deadline.
Not at all. I think Ms. Glassmeyer will explain.
So if that bill gets defeated, the council can certainly introduce another bill at some point. You just missed the February 22nd. Yes, the February 22nd filing deadline, and then that would not, the changes would not take effect for the